Hey Jamie, how are you?
Well, how are you, Craig?
I am fantastic. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, and obviously, you wrote a book, so there's going to be
I
some stuff
did.
that we're going to dive into here in a little bit. But just give us a summary overview of who you are and what you do.
Sure. So currently, my day job, I work as an admin assistant for a financial firm. But in my spare time, I write. Just self-published my first book, and I have a music degree, so I've got a lot of music in my background, and um, not currently doing anything professionally with music, but I like to write songs. Working on recording some of my own songs, so that's kind of been my main creative outlet for music. But yeah, writer, singer, songwriter.
Very, very cool. And so, the title of your self-published book, which we're going to
Hmm.
dive into and spend some time talking about today, is My CCM Soundtrack Life. So,
Correct.
tell us a little bit about that. What was the reason for writing it? Obviously, it's
Hmm.
I've read it, so it's a little bit very much a story of what you were going through. But what was it that made you really say, I have to write this down in a book?
So, my first motivation was kind of selfish. I honestly started writing it as a way to process what was going on in my
Sure.
head. Because I guess about 10 years ago now, I started becoming very frustrated in worship, specifically with musical worship, which was very difficult for me because prior to that, musical worship had been like the highlight of my week and what I looked forward to.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a worship leader. If I wasn't worship leading, I was one of the peppy backup singers on the stage. And all of a sudden, I kind of disconnected with it. And I found myself very frustrated with CCM or contemporary Christian music, which used to be the only music I listened to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just found myself not feeling that connection that I had felt before, and would leave many Sunday mornings just in tears, just wondering, why am I so frustrated? Why am I not feeling the presence of God? And so, really, I just started writing to process through that. Um, and honestly, my husband kind of encouraged me to write a book. He had listened to me, vent thousands of times, and he finally was like, sounds like you need to write a book, because I think he knew that there was probably more people that would relate to my struggles. And so, just kind of, I spent a lot of time journaling. I blogged for a number of years, and then through all of that, I just kind of formulated the book and kind of what I wanted to say. um, yeah, and I wanted to publish it because I knew I couldn't be the only one that was feeling this. But when you go through something like that, you do feel very alone, and you feel like, I'm the only person in the world that's dealing with this. And I think there is just kind of a strength in knowing that someone else is going through something similar. And I just think there's some hope that can be found in that when you tell your story in a vulnerable way. So, yeah, that's what prompted me to write the book.
Well, I'm personally glad your husband encouraged you to do it because I think my message to you after I read the book was something to the effect of why did you write down what was all in my head?
And I've heard that from a few other people
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's
So
high praise. I'm
we're
glad
gonna
to hear
we're gonna
that.
unpack that and dive into that a little bit more as we
Yeah.
go. But I think just the way that you wrote the book, I really appreciated the style of writing. It wasn't,
Hmm.
it's more this is my story, and so you really did a great job of unpacking it in a really, I mean, it was not hard to read. It was a very easy to follow.
Oh,
Just
good.
not.
Thank you.
I mean, it was in depth, but it didn't feel like it was really in depth. And if
Hmm.
you really don't have a good handle on what the CCM world is like, you
Right.
obviously did an excellent job, I thought, of unpacking that. I mean, for me, I'm familiar with it, and
Sure.
so I mean, we're about the same age, and so that
Mhm.
was kind of my wheelhouse as well.
Sure.
So a lot of that was kind of, oh yeah, I remember that, I remember
Right.
that, and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But at the beginning of the book, you kind of chronicled a little bit about your initial interactions with church.
Yes.
Um, and you talked about singing hymns and not really understanding what was on the page and why people sang. And
Yes.
obviously, then as you progressed and as you grew, and you talked about your experiences in college, which that was really really powerful for me, just because my degree is in vocal music education, so
Sure. Yeah.
I understood and
You probably
empathized
have
with that
similar
a lot.
stories.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But just how then you transitioned into the CCM world, that kind of leads
Hmm.
me to my first question is
Yeah.
what style, if you had to give yourself kind of a style that you feel comfortable in now,
Hmm.
where do you find yourself if you say I'm falling into this style or that style,
Yeah.
where would you put yourself?
I'm definitely more toward like the traditional classical sense. I love
Okay.
hymns, and that's really what tends to reach me and touch my heart more than contemporary style music. Which is funny because it's the exact opposite of where I was, 15, 20 years ago. Before it was like contemporary all the way. And,
Hmm.
I didn't hate hymns because I'd grown up with them and I had a respect for them. But
Right.
yeah, now I, we currently go to a church that is mostly contemporary worship. And I love our worship leader. He's great. He's not like a really energetic in your face kind of worship leader. He's
Hmm.
just sort of
Hmm.
subdued, which I appreciate. But I mean, honestly, I just don't really connect with most of the songs he does. And 80% of the time, I'm not even singing along. I just kind of quietly stand. And I definitely connect more with the hymns, with the traditional stuff more. I don't know if it's just with age, it might
I
be
was
part of
just going
it,
to ask,
but
do you
yeah.
think there's a reason? Can you maybe try to pinpoint? I mean, obviously, age might be
Hmm.
part of that, but I wonder too, just even from reading your book, and not that I'm trying to put
Hmm.
words in your mouth, but I think it partially has something to do with the experiences that you've had, maybe
Yes.
a
Yeah,
little
for
bit.
sure. Yeah, I know. When I first started at the School of Music at Florida State, I was incredibly overwhelmed and did not understand classical music at all. It was not something I'd really been exposed to, and all of a sudden
Hmm.
I was expected to like vocally perform it, basically sing like an opera singer, and I was just way out of my element. And honestly, for my first year of voice lessons, just hated it.
Right.
And the more that I was exposed to it, the more I studied it, the more I realized, wow, this stuff is really powerful. And I grew to appreciate the complexity in it. I would go from like singing these super simple, like 3 chord songs on Sunday morning and then turn around Monday morning and go to voice lesson and be like expected to sing these like incredibly complex like phrases. And
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, I think I respect that more now, that complexity. I think one of the biggest things that I really just can't stand about contemporary worship is just the simplistic lyrics. um, there's no thought involved, and I want to think a bit when I worship. I don't want the repetitive phrases over and over.
Yeah, and I think for me, I've hung on to this quote that a college professor of mine said
Hmm.
repeatedly: "We sing what we believe, and we believe what we sing." And
Yeah.
I've tried to really hang on to that, especially for me in choosing music for worship and things
Right.
like that. Of exactly wrestling with that question of what are we singing?
Yeah.
What are we saying when we sing?
Hmm.
And I think for me, I'm in the same boat as you. I really would fall more toward the traditional style of worship. Now,
Right.
part of it for me is that's how I grew up. I mean, my dad was a pastor, so I grew up literally next door to the church. My dad would, in his personal choices of music, would listen to choral music from the
Hmm.
church, organ
Yeah.
music. I mean, I
That's
grew up with
awesome.
that, and
Right.
randomly some country music too, just for fun. But
Yeah.
that's always been my go-to, even though my personal musical listening is across the board.
Yeah.
That's where I feel like home is for me.
Hmm.
And so,
Yeah, I agree.
and two, I mean, I've loved and have done CCM songs
Hmm.
and seen value in that for the
Sure.
church, but yet I come back to that question of what do we believe when we sing it?
Yeah,
What are we
I know.
saying?
Right.
And so that's I think the biggest struggle. And so that's one of the things that you touched on in the book was just kind of feeling that almost a sense of incongruity that it
Hmm.
was just we're believing all this stuff and we're saying this stuff, but yet we're singing this stuff and acting this
Right.
way, which
I
just
know.
isn't who we are.
Yeah, like I would look at scripture, and just see some of these powerful verses, and I would compare it to these simplistic praise choruses we were singing, and I'm like, there's nothing being said in this,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we're just singing it because it's a catchy melody and it makes us feel good or filled up,
Well, and I think
just
even now it's more, at least, and again, I don't know how much you've still spent time in the CCM world over the last
mm,
5 years or so,
not
but
much.
it's I think it's actually gotten more away from melody and more into rhythm. Um,
Really? Hmm.
I mean, because a lot of the songs are just pretty much, one or two notes, right?
Right.
It's all
Yeah.
about the rhythm, and the cadence of that
Yeah.
really make it. And it's like, but you're not saying anything.
I
It
know.
sounds
Yeah.
cool and that's great, but yet you're
Yeah.
not saying anything. Now, granted,
Yeah.
I think it's come a long way since, "Shine Jesus Shine,"
Right.
or
Yeah.
the basic songs of the '80s and '90s.
Sure.
But it's still it doesn't, and I almost think it's structural, as opposed to a hymn where you've got four or five verses, and in each verse you've got four to maybe five, six lines that you're going to unpack what you're
Hmm.
saying.
Yeah.
Whereas in the verse chorus bridge structure of the song, it's simple. I mean, just that
Yeah.
part of it, it's simplistic,
Yeah.
and so you don't unpack it. I think like you,
Yeah.
you
And
could.
I think simplicity isn't bad. Like I had a friend, he grew up with hymns and traditional worship and he hated it. Like he just couldn't connect with it. And when he discovered contemporary worship, he's like, I relate to this. I understand it. I know what I'm singing. So I think in some cases it's not a bad thing. But yeah, I think we just run into that danger of kind of dumbing down our worship in a way,
Well, and I
we
think with anything, it's the purpose behind it. I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
it's
Sure.
and for me, that's growing up in the traditional minded church. That's always been
Hmm.
a frustration. Is doing things just for the sake of tradition without any purpose,
Yeah.
it's meaningless.
And
And,
my husband's really
and I
big
think
on
without
that.
any explanation as to, okay, these are simple songs, but yet here's something where we can dive a little deeper into it.
Yeah.
Now you're going somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
Okay, so I want to jump to the end of the book really quick because I think
Okay.
this is really really important and really powerful because I think this is kind of where we're kind of steering just a little bit of talking about
Yeah.
just being genuine and being real.
Hmm.
You made this statement and it just, oh my gosh, it just was this huge resonating thing for me. It was this like all bold jumping off the page reading to me. I wonder why we don't acknowledge the pain and emptiness more.
Yes.
And with that, I think all too often, and I don't see it, I don't think it's as much in the traditional hymns as it is in the praise and worship songs. I mean, it's kind
True.
of there
Yeah.
in the title,
Hmm.
but everything's happy.
Yes.
And everything is, yes, you'll get the occasional lyric of "in the midst of the struggle I'll praise you." Okay,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's all in a major key.
Exactly.
It's all
And it
happy.
always leads back to you're amazing. I
Exactly.
praise you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And and especially now,
Hmm.
I think, this has really been weighing on me over the past 3 months of just,
Hmm.
okay, life has been rough for most
Yeah.
people. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at how many people are out of work, how many people's lives have been upended and changed, the stress and struggle of people like me of having children, of having them at home
Right. Trying to
constantly.
homeschool and
Uh,
all. Yeah. Oh.
and then looking at the world around us in the past couple of weeks, with everything going on with the murder of George Floyd and all
Yeah.
of this, there is so much heaviness and
Yes.
weightiness that it just seems silly, really. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the best word I can come up with. It just seems silly to sing praise. Now, that to me doesn't diminish the fact that yes, God is powerful, God is great, God is amazing, God is all of those things. There is nothing that's going to change that. But yet, if I look at the Psalms, and one of the things that I've loved about the Psalms is reading them in numerical order. Now, I know that's
Yeah.
not how they were written, but you go from a Psalm 22 of, oh God, my God, why have you
Yeah.
forsaken me, to Psalm
Hmm.
23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie
Yeah.
down in green pastures. You juxtapose that. That's our life, right? There's
Right.
there's that emotion. There's those ups and downs, and it seems like, again, in the simplicity, in the style, in whatever the reason is, we've just only gone to the ups.
Yes, yeah, and contemporary. That's another one of my big hang-ups with contemporary worship now is that it's very extroverted, it's very peppy, it's very raise your hands in the air and sing as loud as you can, and I think that just isolates a lot of people. I'm incredibly introverted, and I've found the older I've gotten, I've just kind of grown more into that introversion,
Right.
especially with worship. And I found like I was an introverted worship leader. So when I was up front, like I wasn't the one that was shouting and jumping up and down. Like I was just very subdued. And I felt like I was doing it wrong. And then as a worshiper, being out there and just feeling like I have to be peppy and
Mhm.
upbeat. And if I'm not doing it that way, I'm worshiping wrong. And it was just very isolating. And I remember when I was writing that line, and that I think set that specifically in. I was writing about another worship um, service that I was
Mhm.
attending, and I looked beyond those people. There's always those people in the front row that are the peppy worshipers, and just excited and hands in the air, which is great. But then you look a few rows beyond them, and you see people disengaged and
Yep.
hands kind of hanging limply by their side, and just not really enjoying the show in front of them. And it's like, what are we doing for those people? Why aren't we reaching to them? Why aren't we talking about the hurts that they might be going through? Like, why aren't we acknowledging that they're not feeling okay? And yeah, I think we just do a real disservice in church when um, we don't embrace lament, which I think is very sad. It's like I think CCM encourages that, put the mask on and pretend that everything's okay,
Oh yeah, and
which really
like I
bothered
said,
me.
I'm a pastor's kid, so I mean, I
Yeah.
grew up doing that.
Right.
So
Right.
that just for me, there was a certain point, probably about maybe my first or second year out of college, where I finally just said, enough is enough of this. I
Yeah.
cannot be this happy person. I cannot put that mask on Sundays if I'm not
Right.
feeling that.
Yeah.
And so for me, the past, actually, it's funny, the past three Sundays have been weird for me for two reasons. Number one, we've gone back to in-person worship. So
Ah.
instead of having one blended worship service, we're actually back to organ and contemporary
Mm-hmm.
worship. Well, um, I'm transitioning out of my full time ministry position at the
Right.
end of the month. So I've actually just been playing the organ for the early service, going home and getting my wife and daughters, and we actually worship together, which
Nice.
it's been great, but yet it's been different because part of me, I'm not playing the keyboard, so I don't know what to do with my hands. you know,
Yes, it's
and I've,
hard being on the other
I've,
side.
I've,
It's like,
I've
wait.
never been a clap your hands, raise your hands person, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that's just, it's been weird for me and it's felt really
Mm-hmm.
strange. And I think it's going to be a transition. But part of it for me, I haven't sung.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple reasons. Primarily just because I've voiced my concerns about actually singing altogether, just with the
Sure. Yeah,
harmonies.
absolutely. That's a
I
valid concern.
personally don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Yeah.
But I've just been doing more listening because for
Yeah.
me in this time, it's just been I want to pray and process through this for me.
Right.
I'm going to be there. I'm going to worship, and I'm going to be there with my family
Mm-hmm.
because that is important, and that's what God has called me to do. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm stepping out of my full time position.
Yeah.
But it's just been weird to listen to those lyrics and say, yet I look around at the world going on around me
Mm-hmm.
outside of the four walls of this building where there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of sadness,
Yeah.
and yet we're just going to walk in the door and just pretend it doesn't exist?
Yeah.
It just feels out of place.
I know. Yeah.
And, that's been the biggest struggle for me over the past 3 weeks is just trying to figure that out and trying
Mm-hmm.
to wrestle through that personally on
Yeah.
what what is that and what does that look like. And I think in reading your book, that was one of the things that really has helped me kind of walk through this is you were there. I mean, you
Yeah.
kind of went through similar circumstances, and yet
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I appreciate, because I know I've read stories of so many that have just walked away from the church and walked away from faith
Yeah.
because of those experiences, because they've
Mm-hmm.
just felt so lost, drained, whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
you kept, because you still go to worship, you still are
Yeah.
there with your
Hmm.
husband,
Yeah.
and see that as an importance. And even from what I was reading and inferring from what you were writing,
Hmm.
even in the midst of that, you were still faithful in worshiping.
Yeah, I tried to be. I mean, it was a rocky, rocky road.
Sure.
You know, we had some church drama that went on at a couple different churches, and
And
um,
every church has it.
yeah, which I've discovered. Yeah, I really have.
Yeah.
There is no perfect church.
There's not.
Um, but yeah, I made the decision to step down from worship leading because I was just drained, and I just, was feeling like there's no point in this. I can't do it anymore. And so yeah, I was kind of in that same place, going to worship, and yeah, what do I do with my hands? And I don't really feel like
Yeah.
singing, but I feel like I should, and and it's really awkward. And so I went through probably 2 years of just kind of being in worship, but just feeling really empty,
Hmm.
but just feeling like I need to keep trying. And the main reason I did that was because I needed the community, because I tend to isolate, um, and just not see anyone. And I knew that was going to be
Hmm.
dangerous for me. And so I wanted to keep engaging, keep kind of forcing myself out, and speaking with people and meeting with our community. But yeah, the worship aspect was, it just felt empty. And then we stepped away from church for a while, partly because we just didn't know where to go. We like church hopped for a while because we left our church that we'd been members for years, and just walked away. And after that, it was like, I don't know where to go. And so we visited a few places, but then we just decided, let's take a break. And so ended up being probably close to 2, 3 years that we weren't going to church at all because we just didn't have a place to go. um, and honestly, that was good. It was good just to step away for a bit, just to have some peace and quiet. I took a lot of long hikes and just
Hmm.
prayed quietly.
Sure.
But yeah, I honestly was wondering. I wonder if I'm losing my faith. I thought that I might be one of those people that was going to end up on that other side. But at the end of it, after a year or so of not going to church, I realized I miss church. And so it was several more years and a little more struggle, but we finally got back to a community that we love and we feel loved in, and are comfortable with. And yeah, so rocky journey, but yeah, God's definitely faithful.
That he is. That he is. Right. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about kind of the after college part of your
Yes,
journey. Uh,
right.
you got to be the musical director for the African Children's Choir.
I did.
That had to have been just an amazing experience that you probably can't really put into words.
It's hard to summarize. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
I
was.
mean, you did a great job of explaining it in the book, but
Thank you.
in reading through it, it just felt like it was one of those just once in a lifetime, amazing, challenging, life building, growing, all of
Yes,
those adjectives.
all of the above. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So just talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
What happened with that, and what was your experience?
Yeah, so I had graduated college. I had a church music degree, and I had applied for some jobs and didn't hear anything, and was just kind of wondering what I was going to do. And I went to an African Children's Choir concert at my church, and halfway through the show, one of the chaperones got up and said, "Hey, we need volunteers to come travel with the kids." And they said we need bus drivers and teachers and music teachers, and I heard that part and went, hey, I could do that. And one of my best friends was there with me, and she turned to me and she said, "You're getting an application, you're doing this." And so she kind of pushed me toward it.
Awesome.
So yeah, long story short, I filled out the application, and a year later I was on a plane flying to Uganda to meet the first group of children that I would work with. I signed up for 1 year, thought I was just going to tour with one choir. Ended up touring for almost 3 years with two different choirs because I loved it. I loved the kids. It was just, yeah, like you said, it was an amazing experience. I got to travel a ton of places, which is great. Yeah, and it definitely helped me grow as a person. Um, yeah, pulled me out of my comfort zone in many areas. So yeah, yeah, like you said, it's hard to sum up into words, but very, very life changing for sure.
And you talked about some of the experiences that you had with getting to have the kids sing for lots of different experiences with other
Right.
very famous musicians.
Yes.
You got to meet
Yes.
Stephen Curtis Chapman, which
I
is
did, which was a
so
dream come
cool.
true for me because I he was
That
like
would be
my
my dream too.
favorite CCM artist. So yeah,
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. He
yeah,
was so kind and gracious. He was wonderful to work with. But yeah, we did a few high profile events. We performed on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. We performed on the Ellen Show. We flew out to LA once and performed at this Oscar party. So yeah, we like met all these famous people who, of course, were just like in love with the kids. And yeah, so some really cool opportunities. But you know, it was funny. I would get home and people would be like, "Tell me about George Clooney. How was he?" And I'm like, I'd rather talk about my kids and
right.
the way we play soccer, and they kick my butt every time. And, you know, teaching them English and how they would get the words kitchen and chicken confused, you know, just like those little
What happens?
stories where, yeah, you know, but yeah, it was funny. Everyone would want to hear about all
Of course,
the big profile, high profile events. And I'm like, no, let me just tell you about playing with my kids. Cause that for me was the highlight.
I bet. Well, and
Yeah.
did the kids understand the magnitude of things like that, like being on the Jay Leno show? Did they
No,
get that?
no, not at all. And it cracked me up because, you know, me and all the other chaperones who knew, you know, we're like, oh my
Hmm.
God, we're here, like on
Right,
TV. And so we're
right.
like putting on makeup and fluffing our hair. And the kids are just over there like, eh. So you've got all these famous people walking in and out of the green room to see them. And the
Yeah.
kids just could care less. I mean, they're like, okay, cool, we're going to perform. And there's, you know, fancy lights and big cameras. That's kind of fun. But yeah, they didn't really understand.
That would be. I think that would be. I'd love to have that attitude. I
I
just
know.
just to be able to just not even really understand. Just
Right.
that
Yeah,
experience.
I know. It was quite
Yeah.
refreshing because here we are like freaking out over all these celebrities and the kids are just like, whatever, no big deal.
Right. Well, and like even getting to meet Stephen Curtis Chapman, from what
Hmm.
you wrote about it, he just was. I mean, just like any other person, right? That's
Yeah.
the way most celebrities are, or most famous
Yep.
people. It's they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like us.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
They're real people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it too. Is being able to humanize that and just saying,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
they're people just like us. They have
Right.
the same joys, the same struggles, even though they're well known or they're
Right.
yeah, that kind of
Well,
stuff.
and another good thing for me that was kind of eye-opening is, you know, in addition to the Christian musicians that we performed with, we also performed with some secular musicians. And
Right.
when I went through my CCM phase, I was all like, this is the only music I should be listening to, and all other music is evil and of Satan kind of thing. And
Hmm.
so, you know, we start these events with these secular musicians, and I'm kind of thinking, oh, well, this would be a great way for my kids to witness to them and you know, to open their hearts to Jesus,
Right.
you know. And I think I was just expecting these like evil people, and what I found was the secular musicians were just, you know, they're human. They were incredibly kind, incredibly gracious. They were wonderful with the kids, and so it was like almost surprising to me to realize that. And so that was a good experience for me, just to see, you know, these people aren't bad, they're not evil just because they don't like devote their life to singing about Jesus. So
Yeah, and I think that's part of the struggle for many of us who grow up in the church,
right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We find that struggle of we have this industry. I mean, because there's really
Yeah.
no other way to say it.
Yeah.
That basically somewhat almost bastardizes the pop music industry. Not even somewhat,
Yes,
really
that's a good
does.
word for it. Yes.
And tries to conform it to be godly and redeemed,
Exactly.
and it is and it isn't because
Mm-hmm.
it's using the same kind of tactics.
Yeah.
It's using the same kind of things that go on in the secular world.
Yeah.
I mean, like for example, this morning when we went to church, we had the Christian radio station on, and they played this new popular song, which was sung in worship. Right? So we sung it in worship today. It was
Yeah.
introduced to the congregation for the first time. And sure enough, about an hour and a half later, when we're driving home from lunch, guess what we heard again on the radio? The same song.
Yeah. It's
And
like
it's
the
like,
top 40. It's just,
okay,
yeah.
but yet these songs are great and we're singing them in worship and they're popular, but then what happens after about 6 months to a year? They're gone.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
It's the same thing with pop music, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been doing over the last year or so is there's a local radio station that plays pretty much mostly 80s, but some 90s music thrown in, and that's my
Hmm.
wheelhouse. 80s,
Yeah.
90s pop music. That's I grew up on that.
Yeah.
I will hear the first, couple chords of a song, and I start laughing, and my girls are sitting in the back seat, and they're like, "Daddy, what's so funny?" I'm like, "Oh, I remember something about this song, some experience," and I'm
Right.
taken back to that point. And so
Right.
they've been
Yeah.
introduced to a lot of those songs from me, but yet I think about that, and it's like those things have stuck with me. And there's been times where I've thought about, okay, so what songs? I mean, my girls are 11 and 8. What are
Hmm.
they listening to now that's going to stick with them 20, 30 years down the
Yeah.
road?
Yeah. Because it will.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right now for my oldest, she's into Broadway musicals, so I
That
think probably
awesome.
the Hamilton
Awesome.
soundtrack is going to be
Yes,
the one.
that's what I've been listening to nonstop. I actually like I was a kind of a latecomer to Hamilton, so I just listened to the soundtrack maybe like 3 months ago, and I've
That's
literally
good
been
stuff.
listening to it nonstop
Yeah,
since. I
yeah.
love it. It's
Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things that I think, it comes in a lot of ways, in a lot of different things when it comes to the church versus the world. It really is that us versus them mentality where it
yeah.
really doesn't have to be.
No, it
I
really
mean,
doesn't. Yeah.
when you stop and think about it, and again, I'm not going to dive too much into the racial issues that are going on, just
Yeah.
because I've said plenty enough as it is,
Same.
but we're all children of God. We are all created in God's image. Whether, the music that we choose to listen to speaks of God or doesn't speak of God, explicitly speak of God, I should say,
Hmm.
um, that doesn't make it right or wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is that, even instrumental music, there is no sacred or secular in instrumental music.
Right. Yeah.
It's music.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the
I know.
lyrics that do, yes, but yet there's a lot of um, CCM songs we'll go with, that I could say, really, I think it seems like they threw a dart
Yes.
at a dartboard of, oh hey, let's pick this Christian phrase, this sounds
Right.
Christianish, and we've made a song, right?
Yeah.
Where there's songs like, I mean, you could pick a bunch of U2 songs or any band,
Hmm.
um, that are much more Christian.
Yeah.
It may not explicitly mention God or Jesus,
Hmm.
but you look at the lyrics and you say, that's a Christian song.
Yeah. I
There's
know.
no doubt about it.
Yeah, and when I stopped listening to CCM and started branching out to other music, I made that discovery. Like, wow, this is spiritual. Like, it's not specifically talking about God, but it's definitely spiritual. And one of my biggest resentments that I had to work through is that realization that CCM really is just a marketing scheme. I didn't realize that. I thought, oh, this is the right thing to consume, because it's Jesus and it's focused on Him, and and they marketed really well to me. And but yeah, once I realized that, I just felt very manipulated and lied to, and yeah, it was very disorienting to make that realization.
Yeah, and I mean, I've gone to so many Christian concerts in my life. I've paid for these wonderful worship experiences. I'm just like,
Right.
wait, if this is a worship experience and it's about God and it's about Jesus, then why are we paying for it?
Yeah.
You know, let's just gather together and you use your gifts and take an offering.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
I mean,
just do a concert. Why do we have to
yeah,
make it like a worship
yeah,
experience? Like
yeah.
it just play your music. Like
Exactly. I mean,
it's like
I remember I went to, I won't say the name of the band, but a very popular band in the 90s, that ended up switching lead singers. But I saw them about 3 times in a row, basically over the course of probably about 18 months or so.
yeah.
And every concert, when it got to the time for the testimony by the lead singer, it was almost word for word the exact same thing.
I think I might know who you're talking about, and I probably saw them as well.
Like that. And I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
that's nice. I've heard it before, and I get, when you're doing concerts every night or you're regularly doing it, you're
Yeah.
gonna have a different audience. I get that, but it just seemed like it's okay. This is what I'm supposed to say now, so I'm
Very
gonna say it.
scripted. Yeah.
Exactly, and and
Yeah.
and that, I think, back at that point really started to kind of change my thoughts and my attitude a little bit of just
Sure.
kind of really saying, what is this, and
Yeah.
so then I started going toward and got to know some really great musicians who are I count them as friends,
Awesome.
local musicians, right,
Yeah.
in my area that I really built relationships with them, got to know them, and I'm like, I know these people, I know they're talented, I know they're fantastic
Mm-hmm.
people,
Yeah.
and for me that was one of the ways I'm like, I'm going to support you, I'm going to talk you
Right.
up on
Yeah.
social media like there is no other,
Yes.
because I respect you and I love you as a friend.
Yeah.
And for me that's been the best thing. I mean, now granted, I've gone to what, two Need to Breathe concerts in the last 3 years because I love that band. But
Yeah.
again, they're Christian and their music gets played on Christian radio,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they're also getting played on secular radio as well.
Yeah.
And so they're able to bridge that. Well, that's great. But I mean, it's things like that where you have to think about what you're choosing to support and what you're choosing to listen
Right.
to.
Yeah.
And like you said, it is marketing. I mean, it really
Yeah.
really is, and it's frustrating in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I get marketing. Marketing's important. I mean, they're trying to direct you toward the product you want to consume, and so I mean that's its purpose. But I think when it's tied in with spirituality, it just kind of feels like, I don't know, dirty, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I mean, even just the translation from it's popular on the radio, so therefore we must use it in worship,
Right. Yeah.
and not.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's not exactly the audience that the song was created for,
Yeah.
really.
Exactly.
I mean, it's more of I'm here to perform this song for you, and in a concert setting, sure you can sing along, but you're going to be drowned out by the sound system.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's not the voice of the people, which is what worship should be. At least I
Yes.
I was taught that, and
Yeah.
the
Absolutely.
case where even for if you're looking at the hymn side of things, even looking at a hymnal, if you can't read the music, you can see that those little black things go up and down,
Mm-hmm.
and you can follow along and follow the melody. And even after the first or second verse, most
Right.
hymns, you're able to pick up parts of the melody, if not the entire
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
Where for most of the CCM songs that are out there that are sung in worship,
Right.
it's pitched way too high for
Yeah.
any normal singer to sing.
Yeah.
It's rhythmically impossible to sing, and yet we're going to call that corporate worship.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah.
And I struggle with that because
Yeah.
to me, and this goes back to my background and my training. I completely and readily admit that, but it's about the people singing,
Yeah.
right? Not the worship leader and the band singing. That's good,
Mm-hmm.
and that's needed. But if you're leading and nobody's following, are you really a leader?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are lots of struggles with that, and I've had lots of struggles with that
Yeah.
too, and I think it's good to wrestle with that because I think in having these tough conversations, it's not, and I'm not intentionally bringing these conversations up to say I hate this and I don't want to do it. No, that's not it at all. I think that style of music can be used in worshiping
Mm-hmm.
God. Because
Yeah.
yeah, hey, I play the organ. I realize that is not where everybody feels the most comfortable in worshiping,
Yeah.
and that's okay. I'm not offended by that in the least.
Mm-hmm.
But then my goal, as a sensitive church musician, is to say, then let's find where your comfort zone is.
Right. Yeah.
If it is with guitars and drums, cool. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But let's do it in a way that you're able to sing, that you're able to sing
Yes.
something that worships God, and
Yeah.
it's something that really just runs all of the emotional spectrum that we're
Right.
on, because
Yeah.
that's the reality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
in in looking at all of this, and I'm curious to hear your answer on this because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in reading your book, it was more of kind of your journey and chronicling your journey, and it
Yeah.
was left kind of open ended at the end of just okay.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, you're still writing songs, but you're
Mm-hmm.
not actively leading worship and that kind of stuff. But
Correct. Yeah.
what what would you say to the church musician or the worship leader who's really struggling with these kind of things and having
Mm-hmm.
questions?
I think the first thing I'd say is know that you're not alone. Um, I have learned that there are many people that are going through similar struggles or have been through similar struggles. And it can be hard when it's tied up with, like, if you're working professionally and you're just feeling disconnected and it's like, well, I need to make a living. It's like, what do you do? Do I step away? So, I mean, for me, I never made my living solely on worship leading. I was kind of more of a volunteer worship leader. So it was easier for me to walk away in that regard. But I think I would just say, don't run away from the discomfort and the frustration and the disillusionment. I would say just, embrace it, figure out what's causing that. Talk to people, pray about it, journal if that's something that is helpful to you. But yeah, I found running away from it and trying to ignore it just makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, don't be afraid to tackle it and find out what's going on. Because yeah, I think it's something that happens with a lot of worship leaders. I think burnout is part of it. I think maybe frustration with the church politics, that realization that is something that happens in every church is
Yeah.
very frustrating. But yeah, I think just having people around you that you can be honest with, be open with, share what's going on, and just be willing to figure out what's causing all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't just put on the mask.
Sorry, that would be
No
my dog
worries.
barking
Hi,
at the neighbor
puppies.
dog. The dog recording outside in the backyard.
Right.
So you're singing. You do have an outlet for singing. You're singing in a community choir.
I am.
So what is it about that that is different, in your opinion, for you, as opposed to worship leading?
Um, well, one thing I love about it is, like you touched on, it's not, just you singing. It's like you talked about, kind of incorporating other
Hmm.
people. The thing
Yeah.
I've always loved about choir singing is it's this unit. It's, hundreds of voices combining together as one. And our community chorus, we do some secular music, but we do a lot of, classical pieces. And so we
Sure.
do a lot of masses and things. So we sing a lot of spiritual pieces. And I've honestly found that to be my worship service more so than Sunday morning. Our rehearsal nights are just, my time to lift my voice up with all these other people. Yeah, so I guess not having the focus on me as a worship leader, I really appreciate. I like being able to blend into all the other voices. I find that really comforting. And I think it's a little more, it's a better picture of what I think musical worship should be. It's all of these
Mhm.
people singing together as opposed to someone at the front of the stage while everyone struggles to sing the rhythm, So yeah, I found great comfort in my community chorus. It's been
And
wonderful.
I think part of that too. I think at least again putting my choral director hat on here,
Yeah.
but I think the teamwork and the support, right? Because
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
solely on you to get it right
Yes.
or to
It's
be
a
the
really good
strongest
point.
singer in the section. It's all
Yeah.
about blending together. And I
Yeah.
think that, and again, I think about it this way, that it's a great representation of the church, or at least what
Yes.
it should
Yeah.
be, is that it's
Exactly.
not one person standing out over above everybody else. It's
Yeah.
everybody working together to create something beautiful and something powerful.
Yeah.
Is it always going to be perfect? Of course not. You may have a section that doesn't come in at the right time, or
Right.
the director
Yeah.
messes up. You never know. But,
Right.
but the whole thing is, it's this beautiful tapestry of unity in sound, in unity in
Mm-hmm.
purpose, and in unity in community. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I've found from directing church choirs, and
Mm-hmm.
I've done that for about 18 years now. Is I think more people come just for that community part of
Yes.
the time together as opposed to the singing. The singing's part
Mm-hmm.
of it. I'm none of it, and that's okay. I'm absolutely fine with that.
Yeah.
But it's really about that connected together and that community,
Yeah.
and I think that's it. And I know for myself and for my choir over the past 3 months, this has been the hardest part. Is
Yeah.
that sure we can get together and have Zoom chats, but it just doesn't physically work to sing together. We
Yeah.
could
It
make a
doesn't.
virtual choir, but that's still not singing together. you
I
know?
know.
And that's
Yeah.
the thing. It's that being together and working together to
Yeah.
make music.
Yeah. And my community choir, we have on average like over 200 members each season.
Yeah,
And we manage to sound like a professional choir, and it's unauditioned, which is my favorite part about it. We have people from, ages 80 to, 16, like, and it's
that's
just this
awesome.
beautiful
Yeah,
picture of, like you said, what the church should look
yeah,
like.
absolutely.
Intergenerational. And we've got some of the older members that aren't singing that great, but they blend in next to the vocal performance major that's sitting next to them, and it comes out beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just this really beautiful picture. But yeah, we did a Zoom meeting with all of our members, and so many of them have said that, like, this was my community, this was
Hmm.
my people, and I miss you. And yeah, it's been really hard.
Yeah, and I mean, for many people, it's I mean, outside of work or going to church on Sunday morning, it's that
Hmm.
one community thing that they
Yeah,
get to do during the week,
exactly.
especially
Yeah.
for those who are older, where they
Yeah.
don't always get out as much, and so
Hmm.
that I mean, okay, so the first month, not a big deal, right?
Right.
Then you get out of month two, and now we're in month three, and it's like, okay, it's starting to wear on everybody,
I
and I get
know.
that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yet, it's also a matter of, and I said this in another podcast, but the question keeps coming back to me, and it has come back to me again and again for the past 3 months and who is my neighbor? You know,
Yeah. I know.
we're yes, we could sing together. We could. It would
Hmm.
probably be the wisest choice, but we could. But it's caring for our neighbor and thinking about other people. Like for my
Yeah.
church choir,
I know.
the average age is probably about 62, 63.
Yeah.
And many of them do have underlying health issues. Okay, then to me that's as much as and everybody would probably say we'll be there or would show up if I said, hey, tomorrow night we're having rehearsal.
Yeah.
It's not time yet, and it's a
I
matter of being
know.
patient, which is what we all struggle with, right? We're
Right.
all
I know.
impatient, and we're conditioned in our world around us to we have
Yes.
to have it now.
I
It's
know.
got to be here. We got to have it now.
Yeah.
All right, we've put in our time. It's been 3 months. Let's get back to normal.
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
not quite.
Yeah, and I'm on the board of directors for the community chorus, and so we're already starting to wrestle with
Oh, sure.
those. Like, okay, we're supposed to start. We had to cut our season short. We didn't get to
Hmm.
perform our spring piece, and so now we're like, all right, are we starting in the fall, or should we postpone until January? Should we, not have the season at all, and just talking
Yeah.
about what those implications are going to be? Yeah, and my big concern is like I can't handle, like, we have vulnerable members, and I can't
Yeah.
handle putting them at risk.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like it sucks, and we all want to
And,
sing again, but
and there's so many, whether it's community choirs, whether the conversation is in school choirs as well, of just
mhm.
what is that going to look like come
Yeah,
August and September. And
I know.
hopefully in the next month or 2 months, we get a better handle and a better picture on what that's going to look like. But
Yeah,
I was telling my senior pastor last week. I said, I've thought about probably 256 different scenarios of what things could look like for rehearsal. I said we are going to have a choir. What that looks like, I have no idea. I
yeah,
said it's gone from I give everybody their music and they practice it online and we figure out a way to get everybody together for a quick rehearsal and sing for
yeah,
worship somehow, or it gets to the point where hey, we're able to be together and pretty much every other thing in between. Now,
yeah.
I'm in Texas, so we could also have rehearsal outside. Um, August outside in
Oh
Houston,
no, yeah, I'm in
not most
Florida, so I'm
fun
with
when
you.
it comes
Or
to humidity, but
yeah,
there's workarounds. But
yeah,
but the point is, it's really challenging us to be creative in what we do, and I think
sure.
that again, now that could be another podcast conversation in and
Right, I
of itself,
know. Yeah.
of we are called to be creative.
Hmm.
Again, you look at the world around us and you see God's creativity at work on display everywhere we look. And so, if we're made in His image, we're going to figure this out. We're going to be
Yeah.
creative. We're going to come up with solutions. They may not be our favorite at the moment. I mean, I don't like being patient. Nobody does.
Right.
I don't like not being able to be together with my singers, having rehearsal for 3 months.
Yeah.
But that's where we are. And so, in the midst of it, you make the best of it and you creatively figure out solutions.
Yeah.
So we're all going to figure it out. I mean,
Hmm.
I look at how many churches jumped to online worship over the past 3 months,
Yeah.
and many of them, that would have been probably the last thing on the list of possibilities for them.
I
But yet
know. Yeah.
they figured it out.
Yeah.
So we have this ability. It's really a matter of let's do this, and let's do it to God's glory, and let's do it the best we possibly can.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But and that should be our thought process for everything we do. It will
Yeah.
not be perfect. I mean, any choral piece that we sing, any music that we make will not be perfect because
Mm-hmm.
we are not perfect. And
Yeah.
that's okay. But we want to do it the best we possibly can.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. One thought I've had through the whole pandemic is one of my other frustrations toward worship is how we focus so much on musical worship on Sunday. And I know it's important, but I just feel like there's other avenues. And I just worry about those that maybe don't connect in the
Mhm.
music,
Right.
and I feel like this is forcing us to get a little more creative in how we worship. And I think that could end up being a good thing.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
even just being still,
Yeah,
I mean, for me,
exactly.
that's
That's
been the
something
thing.
I
Just
wish
being
churches did more.
quiet, not
Yes.
being so busy. I mean,
Yes.
for me and my family, I mean, March, April, May, our family calendar was booked, and
Mm-hmm.
everything went away. And
Yeah.
so for us, it was, wow, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
We're able to just focus on being together and doing things together. I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell you how many meals we've made at home over the past 3 months, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
And just slowing down, but
Yeah. It's
also being still to listen for God's voice.
true.
Because all too often we're so busy, we're talking at God, right?
Yeah.
And we're not quiet. We're not in prayer. We're not meditating on
Yes.
what is it that you're saying, God.
Yes.
And this is an opportunity, if we choose to take it, to really be intentional about that. And so, yeah, you're right. It doesn't have to be about music. It can
Mm-hmm.
be about let's spend time in prayer, whether that's corporate prayer or individual prayer. Let's spend time in quiet.
Yeah.
'Cause we don't do that. We have
I
to have
know. And
sound.
that's one thing I wish Sunday worship had more of. Just a few minutes of quiet here and there.
Yes,
We
I
rush from one
agree
thing to the
with you.
next, and it's like any silence is uncomfortable and we just can't handle it.
Well, and that's the
Yeah.
point. Silence is
Exactly.
supposed to be uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Absolutely supposed to be uncomfortable so that we can focus in on what are you saying, God? Because you're the
Mm-hmm.
one who's my source of comfort. Even in
Right.
the midst of me being uncomfortable in this silence,
Mm-hmm.
speak to me. I'm listening.
Yeah. But
We,
it's like we
we
can't handle that
yeah,
discomfort.
that's
It's
exactly
like,
it. That's
no,
exactly it. Our
let's go on to
brains
the
are
next
spinning. They're
thing.
just okay.
Yeah.
Now it's on to the next thing. It's on to the next thing. Let's go.
Right.
Come on. Let's get this
Yeah.
silence over with.
I
Right?
know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. Okay, one last thing to talk about because you did
Sure.
say you were still doing some writing.
Yes.
Any thoughts or plans for you as to getting out what you've written? Is that recording? Is that doing live concerts whenever that
Um,
comes?
that's
Or
yeah, that's something
what's
I'm
kind of your thought process and plan moving forward?
sure. That's something I'm trying to figure out. I used to do, a lot of performance mainly at church, but
Hmm.
since I haven't been as active, I haven't really had that. So I'm like, all right, where's my audience? And I tried a open mic night one time last year in 2019, and I was so nervous because it had been so long since I had
Right.
performed. And I was doing, for the first time, I was singing some songs I wrote. So that just kind of added like an extra fear factor in there. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's my comfort level?
Hmm.
What do I do moving forward? So right now I'm just focusing on songwriting and recording. So in 2019, I actually set a goal to write a song every month, which I actually succeeded.
Good
So
for
I've got
you.
12 original songs that I wrote. And so my goal this year was to start recording them. Haven't made a whole lot of progress on that. And then I recorded a couple and my laptop hard drive crashed and I lost a couple. So we got to start over. I still have all the ideas saved, but I don't have any like
Sure.
actual recordings or any demos. But yeah, that was my next step is to learn more about the recording process. And luckily I'm married to a sound nerd. And so he's got
That
all the
helps.
gear and he gets me set up and all that. So I'm just kind of learning GarageBand and some other stuff. And yeah, I'm hoping maybe sometime next year I'll have an actual album out of original songs. So
That would be awesome.
yeah, we'll see what happens beyond
Well, the
that.
good news is there's 5.5 months left in this
You
year,
know,
so
well, and I
you
might
still
not
have
have
time to
choir
hit that goal.
rehearsals, so I
True.
might have to fill the time with
Way
that.
to
So
go.
yeah.
Well, good. The biggest thing that I took away from your book and just from our conversation today is
Mhm.
music is a part of who you are. It's a part of your life, and so my encouragement to you is to continue to find those ways to make music, whether that's in the church, whether that's in the
Mhm.
community, whether it's even just at home.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Mhm.
that's even just as important as making music for us.
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
I'll raise my hand and say I'm the last to do that and do
Yeah.
it well. I'm
Mhm.
so busy focusing on helping others make music that I don't even really think about that like I should, and
Yeah.
that's something I'm trying to be better at as well. But
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, the more opportunities we have for that, I think just the more, especially in those times of hardship and struggle.
Yeah.
I think if we go back to that, because I mean that's been the thing for me, and a lot of times is I've had those moments of hardship, of struggle, and I go back to whether that's sitting down at the piano and singing, whether that's sitting down at the piano
Mhm.
and playing, whether that's sitting down at the organ and just going back to what was it that drew me in, what
Yeah.
was it that brought for the piano, what was it that drew in the 5-year-old me,
Right.
to what was it about that? What was it about the organ that made me want to do
Mhm.
this and pursue this?
Yeah.
And I think for all of us, that's where we need to go is go back, not only for that for us, but then to let God speak through that and say,
Right.
here's what I'm calling you to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a period when I, stepped down as worship leader. I really didn't do music at all for probably a year, and I just felt very empty. And that's when I started songwriting and doing a little bit more on my own, and
Yeah.
that's been really fulfilling. And it's funny, you talk about go back to that moment, why did I get into this? And one of those moments for me was in high school. I sang my first solo at a concert. I sang a duet actually with a friend of mine. It was from Miss Saigon,
Mm-hmm.
and so sometimes when I just need to rediscover that joy of singing, I will
Yeah.
pull out the Miss Saigon soundtrack and just belt along with that piece
Nice.
because it just brings me back to 17-year-old me who was, on stage and just so excited to sing. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think sometimes what we do is we just make things a lot more complicated than what they should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for joining us. And
Thank you.
I appreciate you giving up your time today.
Yeah.
And hopefully, we'll have you join us again soon.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right.